you don't try to control the weather. Instead, you try to prepare for the weather that's coming, the forecast. All right. Welcome to another episode of Money Therapy. We're excited to be here today.
Welcome back, everybody.
Bill Magill.
Yes, sir.
Esteemed colleague.
Esteemed.
A financial wizard.
You know, I've been called a lot of things in my life, but I don't know if esteemed's ever one of them.
Well,
so thank you.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you. We appreciate your banter and all the things you're going to teach us today.
My banter.
My name's Brandan Chasteen, and we're here to talk about some things, hopefully put perspective on things that might be causing you stress, worry, concern. Many times when we don't know what to do, we kind of get paralyzed, and paralysis, not taking action, can lead to more financial anxiety. So we're really trying to just put some of that to bed, and we appreciate you. So we're looking forward to it. Let's jump in. And this is kind of timely. I thought about this and wanted to, talk about the notion that a storm is coming.
Yes.
And I want to talk about it because I'm not here to, we do not like to perpetuate fear. But what I'm trying to do here is say that's been the question that I've been getting a lot. I've been meeting new people, and new people are saying, well, when's the next correction?
Oh, yes.
Right? When's the next, what about this thing? What about the election? What about, the U.S. debt? What about all these geopolitical wars and inflation's still high? Yeah. What about all this stuff? And everybody is kind of like in this place of unease.
Yeah.
And they're looking at the sky.
Yeah.
And they're seeing this storm that is approaching. Real or not, true or not, will it happen? We don't know.
Yeah. Well, it always seems to come, it always seems to come as well, like off the tail of a really nice market trend. So, I would say over the last year, the market's been really, really good up until maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks, where we have had some ups and downs and quite a bit of a pullback. And so, like we as financial advisors, or at least what I notice is all of the speculation seems to go away when things are going well. And it turns into, well, can we keep this going? And then as soon as there's a little bit of a pullback or a little bit of choppy waters, people immediately start talking about recession again and major pullbacks and all that stuff. And we had a great episode before about how, we're talking about a boat in the ocean and how actual like calm waters is, abnormal, and how choppy water is the norm. So I just think it's funny. It's very, people's thought process around this is very cyclical. So we're seeing kind of the same thing. We like to outline, when people are expressing to us that a storm's coming, we're trying to figure out how to think through that with people.
So the question is, Bill, you check the weather, you get an alert, you see the sky, like the rain's coming.
Yeah.
What do you do? Like legitimate, literal, we're going to talk about the literal weather.
Yeah.
What do you do if the rain's coming?
Well, I call Chauncey and have him bring my yacht around is my first thing, is what I do.
You want to get on the yacht in the rain?
Yeah. Hey, any excuse to be on my yacht, I guess. I don't have a yacht, for anyone who's listening. And we're not sponsored by anybody with a yacht, which I think is a crime. But to answer your question, no, I mean, I think like everybody else, we check the forecast and we see what's, what they think is going to happen. And I, personally, if there's greater than a 50% chance of rain or thunderstorm, that's when I start preparing. Maybe I'll pack a waterproof jacket of some sort, or I'll make sure I got my hiking boots in the car that are waterproof, or even maybe an umbrella. And if there's going to be like a major storm, I might think about my route to work, or when I am traveling on the roads. So just like how sure are we that it's probably going to happen? Number one, if it's over 50%, and then try and plan for that severity as well. I think severity has a lot to do with it.
So what you're really saying is you prepare for the weather.
Yeah.
Do you try to control the weather?
Yes, I do. In the mornings,
control the weather?
I do. Yes, the rain dance can be very effective.
Can I
Actually.
tell you a story? So I was in the infantry when I was in the military for a time, and I love that job. But there's this old thing that they call a rain turtle, and
Okay.
the notion was like wherever you were, you would basically find some dirt, and you would draw this turtle in the dirt,
Okay.
and as long as nobody would step on the turtle, it would not rain. Inevitably, though, somebody would step on the turtle and it would rain. And listen, I don't know the magic or the voodoo behind the rain turtle,
Yeah.
but it is wildly accurate. Like, I don't know if the rain turtle makes you step on the turtle if the rain's coming. I really don't know how all that works. But what I will say is it was like 99% real in my experience.
99% accurate.
It was insane. If you drew, like, you could check the forecast, it'd be like 100% chance of rain. Somebody would draw a rain turtle and nobody would step on it and it would never rain. There would be a
Okay, but
0% chance of rain. You draw a rain turtle, somebody would step on it
yeah.
and it would rain. It
Does your
I'm
rain
telling you.
turtle ever expire though? Like if it's been a week, do you have to draw a new rain turtle, or is it one
Well,
rain turtle
sometimes, like,
every day?
it's in the dirt, so oftentimes if the rain would come, then, the rain would wash the turtle away. And then
Yeah.
sometimes if it didn't rain long enough, just the wind and the, kind
Mm.
of nature would take care of you know, wash or getting rid of the rain turtle. But like if you're in the military, if you're listening to this or you have ever been, you probably know the rain turtle. And I'm telling you, the rain turtle was a real thing. The point of all that, though, is we are not in charge of the weather
No.
as much as we are not in charge of markets and economies.
Right.
What you were saying is you don't try to control the weather. Instead, you try to prepare for the weather that's coming, the forecast, right?
Yeah.
So I want to introduce this concept that's called nonlinear dynamics.
Yeah.
And
Very
nonlinear
interesting.
dynamics says it makes it nearly impossible to accurately predict the weather. The weather is part of a nonlinear dynamic system. It
Yeah.
essentially says these systems, the relationships between cause and effect, variable and outcome, it's not always proportional and it's definitely not predictable. The reality is, and this is important, the smallest change of any variable in a nonlinear dynamic
Hmm.
system can have completely different outcomes or events.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. This makes me think of Saudi Arabia, and let me tell you why. Um, Saudi Arabia does this thing. They make it rain like once a month. Have you ever heard of this?
Yes.
They fly like a plane up and inject maybe CO2 or nitrogen into the atmosphere. I forget which one, but they inject a bunch of it and basically it forms clouds and rains. But sometimes they like get it. I don't know. They don't necessarily know where that rain's gonna land. And so they've like flooded out like other cities and other countries that they
I
were
think they're in
not
the news
trying to
right
rain
now,
on.
right? Is
Uh,
it Saudi right now? There's some country that does that that's in the news right now because they flooded like their airport.
Yeah, they do that. Yeah, they almost always flood something out because they don't
Yeah.
know where it's. So anyway, that just kind of in our weather analogy here, like yeah, you could put a lot out, and sometimes especially with the market, you don't always know where it's going to land, right? But
Right.
you are trying to control the weather. So that's a great example of how it's very very difficult, almost impossible to control the weather.
Yeah, it is. And you mentioned in show prep about the butterfly effect.
Yes.
Tell us how that plays in your mind.
Well, the butterfly effect, if you've seen the movie with Ashton Kutcher, explains it perfectly. I'm just joking. Um,
I do
but
love that movie.
but it's this idea that everything has ripples, and if you make in a timeline, if you make one little subtle change here, like instead of a ham sandwich today, I had you could go back in time and change the fact that you had a turkey sandwich. That would somehow have a tremendous effect on the end of that timeline. Maybe you wind up in a mansion as opposed to you wind up homeless or something. Just making things up, but it's this idea that every decision that we make throughout time has a bunch of ripple effects and cause and effect down the road. And my thought, my logic trained based on that was, well, inherently that makes it hard to, like, if you're thinking back on your life on maybe what you would have done differently, or a decision you would have made differently, not necessarily a mistake, but maybe something you would have changed. You don't always know where the start or end point of those things are, because those came from something else. It's kind of like the chicken or the egg thing. So
Right.
um, it kind of forces you to go, okay, well, sometimes I can't change the past, and you can't, you obviously can't change the past, but um, maybe you can try and learn from it and go forward and make better ripples almost. But yeah, that's those were my thoughts on it.
Yeah. So I think like what you're also implying almost is that life itself is kind of a nonlinear dynamic system.
Yeah, and I think we illustrate this, like, as financial advisors, we illustrate this in a bunch of different ways. But the one thing that I was thinking of is I love showing somebody who's 20 years old what just $100 a month does when they're investing that into like a Roth IRA, for instance, and how it turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Um, a lot of the time. I mean, not guaranteed, obviously, but a lot of the time in what we do. But showing them again, like, I didn't eat a ham sandwich, I ate a turkey sandwich. Small little changes, $100 is not that much, but it has this tremendous impact down the road. And it may not just be the compounding interest part of that. It could just be developing the habit to saving, which we've talked about in the past. But again, every decision, being aware of every decision, having ripple effects down the road from today. Yeah, I think is a very important concept to be aware of.
I think, I hope for everyone it's obvious what we're alluding to here, right? So many of us want to challenge the markets and be in control of the markets. But while this is easy to understand, it's obvious, it's kind of laughable at the notion that we try to control the weather. But when we say, hey, we're not in charge of markets and economies, that doesn't sit well,
Yeah.
right? So obviously what we're trying to do is correlate and create a perspective that the markets and economies are largely out of control. And just because we hear things like national debt is at all-time highs, just because we hear things about geopolitical, strife, just because we hear things about global, wars occurring and where our money's going and where their money's going, and because of political stuff like the elections that are soon coming, we hear all of this stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to lead to the outcome that we expect,
Right.
because of small little ripple effects that could be like things. The reason the market is going up might be because of something small that happened 10 years ago,
Yeah, it could be.
right? So you can't put all the data into a vacuum when it comes to
Yeah.
markets and economies, because it just won't work. It's a non-linear system, and inside of that nonlinear system, it's just unpredictable. And
Yeah.
so we've been getting a lot of questions in the midst of the recent pullback that we're in. Let's
Yeah.
talk about, a pullback, typically 3 to 5%, right? Correction, you start to get into that 10% range of pullback that's 10% or around there. And then you
Sure.
have like the bear market stuff, right? Where that's usually around the 20% mark or greater.
Yeah.
So, you know, are we in? People keep asking me, is this just a little 5% pullback, or is this a correction, or is this something that's beginning of something even greater than that? And the
Yeah.
reality is we don't know,
Yeah.
right? So in thinking about this, the funny thing is the question, can we control the weather? I want to suggest that you have a lot more control over the weather. Most of us do, than you might think. How do we control the weather? Well, you just don't participate in the weather, right? If it's going to be 108 degrees and it's super hot and it's super humid, you can stay inside and set your thermostat to 70 degrees. You don't
Yeah.
have to participate. And if there's massive thunderstorms or a lot of snow coming, you can
Yeah.
stay home and not participate in the weather.
Yeah.
And I want to offer that if you want to, if the volatility and things that happen once we give control over to the markets are so terrifying, don't participate in the markets. Stay home,
Yeah.
set your thermostat, do something different, and you can do that.
Yeah.
But the minute that you step outside, you are stepping into the environment and you lose control. Now it's about preparation.
Yeah. Yeah. And to beat this metaphor to death for sure is some people, like participating in the market is their number one way of trying to prepare for, retirement or building wealth or whatever it is. And so like if you're sitting there thinking that, well, Brandon and Bill, I don't have a choice. I have to participate in the market because I don't, have rental property or something else that generate a business that generates income like this is my primary way of doing it, then yes, you got to prepare. And what I always think about is, I'm from Ohio where winter storms are a constant. And every time that I knew, the forecast said snow or whatever, I would make sure that I had an extra winter jacket, extra blanket. I had a whole like emergency roadside kit with a jack with, I had a pump in it to pump up a tire. I had, fix a flat. I have a spare tire. I have, flares. I have those triangle things that light up like from a mile away so that you don't get hit by somebody flying down the highway. And what's funny is like I've never had to really use any of those things, but they're in the car and it's like I have to go through this storm, I have to get to where I'm going, and I have to brave this volatility. But I have some measures that I've taken that in case something bad happens, I'm as prepared as I possibly could. I mean, could my car get hit with a snowball and explode like it's an action movie and I die? Yeah, sure. I guess it could, physics people out there, give me some leeway here, but you can't prepare for everything, but you can do quite a bit. We talk about cash flow and net worth and how we analyze that with our clients. Those are things that we've kind of identified that you can control. Like I can't control the ups and downs in the market, but I can control you keeping more of your cash flow every month. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Well, maybe you got some credit card debt that's 25% interest out there. Maybe we should talk about, getting that off your back so that you get to keep your money going forward, So, not to, dive into, specifics there, but there are things that you can do when you have to head out into that storm.
Yeah. While you were talking, I remembered the thought was sometimes we prepare for things or we think we need to prepare for things that are just in reality like insignificant in terms of the number of times it occurs.
Yeah.
But some things just get blown out. They get hyper sensationalized. They get blown
Oh
out of
yeah.
proportion. It seems like it happens to everyone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought back to like, I don't know if this was true for you, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember a time period in my childhood, mainly because of cartoons, how scared, like I was overly anxious about like sinking sand, quicksand.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You'd see like Bugs Bunny and whoever he was running from to get stuck in the sand, and like I'm like, the ground can swallow you. Like,
Yeah.
where is this quicksand?
Yeah.
I, I was like, I am always going to keep like sand. If there's sand around, I'm keeping an eye out for the stuff that like seems to want to swallow me.
Yeah.
Um, and I was so prepared
That's
for
awesome.
quicksand. Like like I had a plan
So
to
funny.
make it out as a child. I've never come across quicksand in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never
It's
have.
hard to even make quicksand. Like we know the components, but it's hard to even make it.
I
It's
don't know
like,
anything about quicksand. Honestly,
yeah.
I would you would have to convince me that it's even real. I know nothing
Yeah.
about it, but I was so prepared for it as a child because it was a big thing. And like also, like how many times did I practice stop, dropping, and rolling in case I just randomly caught on fire as a kid?
Yeah.
All
Well,
the time.
here, so let's tie. I want to try the quicksand. I want to tie that into our metaphor here because I got the perfect transition for it. But so we had this bathroom reader book, and it's talking about the 10% pullbacks in the market, that which
Okay.
we've talked about before, and people going, "Oh, is this a pullback?" Making a big deal out of it. Well, this little bathroom reader has like 1,000 ways to survive weird ways of dying, and one of them is being set on fire. The other one is quicksand, and literally in the book it goes, quicksand really ain't that big of a deal. Like just spread out and like lean back and just kind of wiggle your way out of it. Like it's really not that big of a deal. right? And that just kind of shot into my head when you were talking about it. Like, yeah, you think instant death because we've all seen that Western where the cowboy, the bad guy can't get out or whatever. And it's like, that's what a 10% pullback is in the market. Just to remind, we did an episode a long time ago how on average, a 10% pullback happens just about every single year in the
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
But the market over a long period of time, averages whatever it averages, somewhere between 8 and 10% typically. I think some people, depending on when you look, it could be 11, it could be 10, whatever you want to call it. But a 10% pullback happens pretty much once a year. It's not that big of a deal, just like quicksand. So don't be too scared of quicksand, and don't be too scared of 10% pullbacks.
So I think, we have to assume with markets that a healthy market goes up and down. It cannot be predicted. Even if we have endless data, the relationship of all those data points can produce wildly non-proportional and unpredictable outcomes every day, every moment. Like you just like it, I can do all the homework, and I do a lot of homework.
Yeah.
Because I try to make the best decisions for my money and the money that I manage for my clients.
Sure.
But the reality is there is it just 2 plus 2 does not exist in the stock market.
Sometimes it does not. Yeah.
It doesn't. So I guess the fundamental question is if we can easily relinquish control of the weather to the atmosphere, why can't we relinquish control of our portfolio to the markets?
Yeah, I
The
think we can.
assumption is like, sure, there could be an earthquake, there could be a tornado, there could be a wildfire, there could be all these things. But even still, I'm probably going to be okay. And we just walk around this world that way for most of us, right? Like very few people go through life. There are some people that are like absolutely terrified of thunderstorms, right?
Well,
But most of us
and
grow out of that. So why is one easy, one so hard?
I don't know. I think a lot of it is a matter of perspective. I mean, to stick again with the weather thing, I mean, like sometimes there's a hurricane coming in, right? And it's all over TV and blah blah blah. And there's people who evacuate. We always see this on TV. People evacuate when a hurricane's coming. And a lot of people go, that's a very logical thing to do. I'd probably do the same. And then there's always like 3 or 4 surfer dudes that are like, it's perfect out, man. Let's hit it. And they're like, everybody else is going, you guys are going to die. What are you doing? Right. But I think there is this component rather of perspective, and so, we talk about all the time as advisors. Okay, if a 10% pullback is normal, or there is, a storm coming, what if we looked at that? We don't have to, but what if we looked at that as an opportunity, right? Where other people are scared. We've talked about, the Warren Buffett quote and all those things, but, I think we can. I think, we can relinquish, there's some freedom in relinquishing some control and focusing on that preparedness.
Yeah. And I
that
think
we've been talking about.
that's ultimately what the key point I think to make is that when we talk about the weather, everything is about preparation. Nothing is about control.
Yeah.
When we talk about markets, so many people want control, and that's just the wrong question. And that's what leads to a lot of anxiety. And so if we can somehow find a way to understand, let's not try to control it. Let's try to prepare for what's next, what we need, what we want, and approach it from that perspective. I think we can have a lot more because you can control your preparation, right? So if instead of trying to control the outcome of the market, if instead we control our efforts in preparation, we would probably be happy with the outcome most of the time, right?
Yeah, and I think like sticking with this idea of perspective and subjective thought about these things happening, a lot of it is, what are we actually preparing for? Like I think of, if there is a snowstorm out there and I've got to go 10 minutes down the road, I'm probably not going to pack, everything up like I talked about earlier in the show, right? If I'm going 300 miles, I probably am, right? Packing the coat, packing the the tires and the fix a flat and all that stuff, right? And it's kind of the same thing, like for somebody who is trying to decide whether to brave market conditions and things, or try and beat inflation or something like that. I think it depends on where you're actually going. Like, and you got to know, what does this storm even have anything to do with me? Like, and we were talking about this before. Inflation is pretty much the term of the last year or two, right? But like if I'm 82 years old and I'm retired living on Social Security, like that problem doesn't really matter to me too much. I mean, it does, but even if, we last another 10, 15 years, that inflation, whatever it ends up being on average over that 10-year period of time, probably doesn't change your life a whole heck of a lot. If you're 20 years old, however, it has a tremendous effect on how you might be able to retire, prepare for that storm in the future. And so the idea is, how do we construct a portfolio, control what we can control in order to, weather all sorts of, market conditions and things,
Yeah.
and
So
actually pick
with
out problems that are problems to us.
yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. If it's supposed to storm and I'm staying inside, I don't have to do anything, right? So sometimes storms might be coming, but you're right. It's either like don't prepare for the rain when the snow's coming, don't
Right.
prepare for the heat in the middle of the winter, and also don't get caught up in it if you're staying inside anyway, potentially, right? So
Yeah.
I guess the big question that I have then is we're all trying to create wealth, right? We're all trying to improve our situation. Um, what do I need to focus on? Where should I focus my efforts in controlling what I can control? What can I control if I can't control the markets, if I'm wanting to obtain a position of greater wealth? What can I control?
Yeah. Well, I want to throw this right back at you because I think you have a great way of explaining this, because we've had so many discussions about, we talk mainly about cash flow and net worth and um, how to track progress with that instead of things like the market and stuff. Um, so I would love you to kind of dive into that. I think you do a much better job of explaining that than me. So
Okay.
right back at you, dude.
Appreciate that. So yeah, I think I always tell my clients that I'm working with, and when we get started, I kind of explain this. Like I don't control the markets. It's not an excuse to not do my homework and not be well researched. We can talk endless data points. I have them all in my head. Like I spend a lot of time doing research,
Sure.
but that's not what we're going to grade me and our partnership on. What I'm trying to do is, first of all, can I increase your cash flow?
Yeah.
Second of all, can I increase your net worth?
Yeah.
And third, can I add layers of protection to make you safer?
Yeah.
Right? Because all of those, if we focus on those things and stop trying, like sometimes we feel helpless, so we hear all the noise and we think, well, if
Hmm.
they're all talking about the stock market, that should be where I focus. But
Yeah.
we lose sight of the fact that we don't have control there. But what we're ignoring, we do have control over. So
Yeah.
I try to give my clients confidence and get rid of the anxiety by saying, okay, how do we impact cash flow? How do we increase that this year? I want you to find ways to make more money.
Yeah.
I want, man, that thumbs up thing just never goes away. I don't know how to turn it off.
It looks so
I
good.
want I want to I want to increase your cash flow. I want you to earn more money.
Yeah.
I want you to um, do the right thing by paying the right amount in taxes,
Yeah.
right? That's the second thing. And then the third thing is I want to figure out ways to, through preparation, to increase the protection that you have to sustain the wealth you're building as you
Yeah.
build it. Those three things are things that we can do, and it doesn't matter what the stock market's doing. Guess what? If the stock market doesn't behave well, you can still increase your net worth that
Yeah.
year. If the stock market behaves well, you'll really increase your net worth that year.
Yeah.
But guess what? The stock market doesn't impact at all how much money you're earning and spending.
Yeah.
It doesn't like you can do things inside of it. In fact, stock market losses sometimes can help our tax picture. So sometimes when the stock market goes down, we can actually increase our tax flows by paying less in taxes.
Right.
Right. So there's things that we can control. And by the way, we can always focus on adding layers to our defense, right? In the military term, layered defense. Like we
Yeah.
can get more defensive and build a more robust defense through protections and continually adding layers. So regardless of what's going on, you can be safer, which is something that people want,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think that's a great explanation. I would add like a little like kind of caveat to that is, yeah, like one way of growing, one way of increasing cash flow is, maybe increasing income or increasing assets that pay you income. Another way could be, cutting down on bills that are unnecessary, so like I talked about a 25% interest credit card,
Mhm.
if that's, if there's $5,000 on the credit card and it's costing you $250 a month or something, and we find a way to get rid of that, it's $250 increasing to your cash flow. That's just a very basic example. So there's two ways that you can do it. You can make more, you can cut down, or you can make more while you cut down. And
Yeah.
there's all those. Yes, the market's going on over here, but you're focusing what I call it your like foundation. Let's get a
Right.
really nice strong foundation. um, and that comes about with doing, an in-depth look of where you are today and where you need to go. And I think that the cash flow and the net worth is a great way to track that progress, because again, it's as much as possible, it's tracking the things that we can control the absolute most.
Yeah. If you we use that the financial planning tool that elements, and it really does present well the fact that most people can do a lot of things outside of the stock market and increase their net worth. And even if they have assets invested in the stock market, if the stock market goes down, by reducing liabilities and by, your house still appreciating and you're paying down your mortgage, like all these things are in fact impacting your net worth. So once you step back and start looking at finance as this holistic kind of environment that you're in and not
Yeah.
just this single effort, that's when you realize, oh, this still matters. It
Yeah.
just doesn't matter as much as I thought it mattered. And I actually
Yeah.
don't have to worry about being in control. I just need to be prepared. So my
Yeah.
next question for you is, when and how often should we as responsible investors focus on the market side of things?
Again, I think that depends on perspective and where you are today. Because if you're 85 and you're retired and you don't have a house payment, and we've done an in-depth budget, and you need $2,500 to run your house and do whatever it is, live the life that you would like to live. And social security or pensions add up and you take home $3,000 a month. Well, in that vacuum, you can have a bunch of 401ks and everything on the side, and they're going to go up and down, but it doesn't affect your everyday life.
Right.
Whereas, if you're 20 and you're just starting out, like we said, $100 a month changes everything. So
Yeah.
making that decision to pay off that credit card or maybe that car, or pay down my house as early as possible, or whatever your goal is to increase the cash flow, that will compound either in the market, in other ways of your life, depending on what you get into or where you put your money after that. If your main goal is, I don't necessarily want to build wealth, but I want to give to charity. Well, guess what? If you got a paid off house and no bills of any kind, you can give the maximum
Let,
amount to charity, right? So,
let me jump in because I think you didn't answer the question. Right.
oh, okay.
I want to talk about just my investments in the market.
Yeah,
Okay. So yeah, like there's a lot of things that we should be focusing on. My question was and is, how often, if I have money in the market,
yeah.
what is a healthy balance to focusing on that? How often should I check on
Uh,
things? Like that's the question. So like,
yeah,
yeah,
I flew right by that. Yeah,
once we actually start saying, okay, I do have money, like we're not telling people to ignore it.
no,
We're not giving you excuse to not do your homework. So the
yeah.
question is, how often should like if I have stuff in the stock market, if I have investments just broadly, any kind of
Yeah.
investment, how much attention should I pay to it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, I don't know, in my experience, I usually tell people once a month.
Yeah.
But that's because in working with so many people over the years, I find the people with the most healthy balance with their finances and how they look at the market and look at their lives and look at how they're building, their individual strategy. They tend to be the most, I would say, like healthy balance in terms of mindset. If they look at it once a month, the people who look at it every day, a lot of times drive me crazy.
Yeah. You don't need to
And
do
they
that.
drive themselves crazy, and I think like you and I, like I look at it every day, but like when I look at AT&T, an individual stock or something, or the S&P 500, let's just stick to the S&P 500. If it's up 1.5%, that's pretty good movement for the day. But my thought process is immediately, yeah, it goes up and it goes down, and then I look the next day and it's down 1%. I go, it
Yeah.
goes down and it goes up, like it goes up more over time. I know that. But if that's your attitude, then you can look at it every day. But you're not gonna see progress if you look at it every day. If you look at it every month and you have that, oh well, overall my investments have gone up this month, like you're feeling like you're making progress. If you get caught up in the day to day, it's almost impossible to see whether the market's going up or down unless you're actually tracking it like we do, in my opinion.
So I want to break down a couple things to add to that.
Yeah.
First, I think it depends largely on how you are invested, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's something big that I think a lot of advisors and planners miss, right?
Yeah.
Warren Buffett was a big fan of diversification,
Yeah.
but he also very much said that diversification is a means to preserve your wealth.
Yeah.
Concentration is a means to create wealth.
Mm.
So I think it very much so depends on where you're at in life, how much attention you should be paying, and the tools and resources you should be using. So, first and foremost, if you are a self managing person, if you have your own investments, you have your own IRAs, you have your own, transfer on death accounts, whatever, you have your own investment accounts. If you
Yeah.
have individual stocks in those investments accounts, my recommendation is a monthly cadence that looks something like this. Every ticker symbol, every stock that I own, I'm going to Google that stock once a month. And I'm going to look for news articles about what is going on in the company and in the sector that that company exists in. I'm going to look
Yeah.
for trends. I'm going to try to identify the health of the company. We're never making an investment unless we plan to own that investment for like 5 to 7 years generally. But we
Yeah.
do have to make sure that things like, oh, a CEO is, stealing money, or, there was one where the company, I'm not going to mention the name, but a CFO bit the cheek of a fan in front of him, and that company had a lot of fallout from that.
Wow.
Funny story, but you have to stay on top of it. So you Google and you do whatever, you research news
Hilarious.
articles about that company once a month. And you should also be listening to every quarterly call and reviewing every quarterly report that comes out. So on average, you do that per like company. If you have 10 stocks, you're doing about 2 of those a week. And even though you're paying attention to your portfolio every week, or once a month per stock, the reality is you're not thinking about your whole portfolio,
Yeah.
right? You mentioned we look at this stuff every day. I look at the markets every day, but for different reasons. And when I'm focused on today learning this thing about the market, I'm not focused on the rest,
Right.
right? Then the other thing is you can buy like ETFs, or you can buy mutual funds that have more passive slash active management, but they have rebalancing things, and you're not making the decision. You're more at that point, you're more focused on the sectors or the indexes that they follow. And
Yeah.
for that, you could probably actually step back and only need to review things about every 6 months to a year. Because
Yeah.
really all you're focusing there is, do I want to overweight certain sectors? Do I want to underweight certain sectors? If I got a mutual fund, is the manager doing what he said he was going to do? Meaning, if he says this is a growth fund, does he have growth companies that I like?
Yeah.
right? So you can actually step back, and of course, you can hire out the management, right? And
Yeah.
then you're just going to hold the person that you're hiring to be
Hmm.
doing that, and you should expect like at least an annual, if not semi-annual or quarterly call saying, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm thinking. This is what we're doing," and you want to have confidence that they're making good decisions. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the more concentrated you are, so if you're in the wealth creation phase and you
Yeah.
need to be concentrated, it's a lot more involved. Once you
Yes.
step over to the wealth preservation side of things, and now we're just using the market as a means to preserve wealth and we diversify our assets, then again, I think it's more of that, like as you get older and you're in retirement now all of a sudden it's like, well, I just want diversified. I want it to be adjusted for risk. I want, income, I want dividends, I want certain things I need. We know what
Yeah.
we need at this point for our life and our cash flows. So at that point, it can become more of like an annual thing. So I think
Yeah.
that's important. To
Yeah.
to understand, and that's why like, I mean, if
Cool.
you are owning stocks, you need to be doing homework, and that
Yeah.
homework should be at least once per month per stock.
Yeah. I want to take it back half a step too. I mean, we are not saying that everybody should go out and, become a money manager and own single stocks and things like that. I think Warren Buffett's advice as far as concentration versus conservation can be applied to a lot of different things. A lot of people go all in on their small business. That's a
Mhm.
way to concentrate and grow your wealth. A lot of people go all in on their 401ks and IRAs, and over time grow their wealth through mutual funds, ETFs, common stocks, things like that. Again, it's all part of the weathered storm. If you're doing individual stocks, you're traditionally going to have a much bumpier ride. You're probably one of the surfer dudes heading out into the hurricane, right? And that's you have to be okay with that or learn to be okay with that. And we certainly don't suggest anybody does that all the time, full time. Um, but concentrating, I would think kind of as a macro theory here, like concentrating on 401ks, IRAs, mutual funds, and ETFs is that is the number one wealth accumulator in America right now for the average person to become wealthy and sustainable over a long period of time. Warren Buffett does a lot. He basically, his company Berkshire Hathaway, they buy the majority shares of a lot of those companies that they take on, or at least a big share of it. So they're doing something completely different than even we are. But I think it's a great metaphor of, yeah, whatever you're going to become successful at, whether that's money or building a small business or whatever it is that concentration is key. And then over time, learning how to conserve it is that's the second half of the ball game, I think.
Yeah, I only want to push back a little bit on the fact that, you mentioned this, like the markets, diversified mutual funds, all this stuff, IRAs, is the way the average American approaches building wealth.
Okay.
Um, but a lot of people that are listening to this don't want to be average, right? And so I think again, the really hard thing to take away, unfortunately, there is no single path to your success.
Sure.
The fortunate thing and the really good news about that is we don't have to try to fit a square peg into a round hole. There's
Right.
many ways for people to build wealth. And to your point, I think one
Yeah.
thing you were getting at is, you know, we're not trying to tell you your way. We're just trying to say, don't try to control it, but there are ways to stay prepared and be on top of things. Also, if
Yeah.
you don't like the stock market, you don't have to participate at all in the stock market.
You
There are
don't?
many, many paths to getting to where you ultimately want to be. There's
Yeah.
just trade-offs with everything. That's the beauty of risk. It's which kind of risk can I tolerate the most? Which,
Yeah.
if I go to a buffet, there's certain foods that are most palatable. There's certain foods that I don't want to touch, right? Same thing to building wealth. There's certain things that are palatable. Maybe uber concentration scares you or terrifies you to death. So look for other paths. And if you need help with that, we'd love to partner up with you also, obviously. Um,
Absolutely.
I think like we can wrap up. I think I want to just, a lot of what we talk about is directing our focus to self-improvement, our
Yeah.
beliefs, our actions, our cash flow, and our net worth.
Yeah.
I think it's just really, really important that we understand that healthy portfolios, they can be healthy and work really well. They can be healthy and not perform so well. But there's huge amounts of our own like well-being, mental well-being, and our financial well-being that alludes to our focus should be in preparation, not control. And inside of preparation, just constantly asking the question, what is in my control that I
Yeah.
can do, take action on, and prepare for? I think those are huge homework or huge thoughts. Sorry, I just read the word homework.
Yeah. I think that's the perfect wrap up, dude.
Cool.
To me,
I think
perfect.
so too. So we appreciate you guys listening. Focus on preparation, not control. There's many paths that can be a little bit daunting and overwhelming and not feel I wish there was just one way. I wish there was, because I would just tell you how you could be successful, but there isn't. There's many ways. And the best thing to do is to sit down with somebody if you're serious about building wealth, and get many brains, get many thoughts, and get some accountability. And I think that can be largely beneficial too.
Absolutely, man. Yep.
All right.
All right. We will see you all next week. Reach out to us on harpethwealthpartners.com. You'll find our emails, Spotify, follow us, YouTube, subscribe to us, and we'll see you all next week.
Later, guys. We hope you learned something valuable today. We appreciate you including us in your journey towards financial betterment. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes only and not to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions about how it might be uniquely applicable to you, please discuss that with a financial professional, or, of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you about your specific questions, needs, or circumstances. We welcome you to reach out to us via our website, harpethwealthpartners.com, or by emailing Brandan at bmc@harpethwealthpartners.com. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice is offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not to be intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult appropriate qualified professionals prior to making a decision. Investing includes risk, including fluctuating prices and loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. We want to thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you back next week.